Welcome to The Net Result, the podcast where we explore the innovations and bold ideas shaping senior living, healthcare, and human connection. I'm your host, Ben Smith, and today's conversation is one you absolutely don't want to miss. Our guest is Dan Thompson, serial entrepreneur, technologist, and futurist who is the founder of Sensay. Dan has dedicated his career to the incredible idea of digital immortality, using artificial intelligence to capture and preserve our knowledge, memories, and even personalities. Through projects like Forget Me Not and his pioneering books, he's exploring what it might mean to stay present for generations to come, even after we're gone. Dan, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. Great to talk about one of my favorite topics.
Awesome. Let's start with the big idea. You talk a lot about digital immortality and mind uploading. Can you explain what those terms really mean and why they matter in today's world?
Yeah, so the idea of mind uploading isn't a new one. Everything from The Matrix to more recent shows like Upload and a few others that are out there, from Altered Carbon, those books, and concepts of living in a virtual life with virtual humans. And when we talk about digital immortality, this idea of people immediately start thinking, oh, how is that going to work? How do I live inside a machine? It's great when you look at things like Black Mirror and popular culture versions where you think maybe there is some kind of future where we can transfer whatever our consciousness into a digital format that can coexist with other digital consciousnesses into taking ourselves from a biological sense into a potentially a physical sense of compute and computation for ourselves. It becomes actually quite a large step that we're probably nowhere near achieving. I mean, and the Festival of Consciousness in Barcelona and a conversation around consciousness, AI, interactive consciousness, and what that means for the future really is just this big step that we are still facing. When I talk about digital immortality, I'm not talking about having your own brain taken out or mind uploaded directly to a computer system where you can sort of feel or continue living in some kind of transcendence into digital format. What I talk about really is the continuation of the self, not necessarily yourself, but of your identity. So by capturing enough of ourselves from our digital footprints, capturing the photos, the videos, the recordings, the messages we send, creating a digital lifelike personality that's almost indistinguishable from you, but isn't you. So if someone was having a conversation with it, they wouldn't know it's not you if they weren't told in advance.
Mm.
By having that version of you that can exist longer than your body and your mind survive for, really creates this opportunity for a form of immortality where your grandkids, great grandkids, and further beyond can interact with a version of you to learn about you, to learn about your life, your stories, your lessons in a way that we, unfortunately, as a society have lost. Generations ago, we're talking like centuries now, we had this innate ability to remember stories, remember people from multiple generations back. And over the course of history, we've kind of forgotten that. So now we're lucky to remember 2 or 3 generations back rather than what they would have been able to remember 4, 5, 6, 7 generations back. We've lost that storytelling and lost that ability to know about our ancestors because we only really know our grandparents and maybe our great grandparents by name, and maybe a few bits of information about them. But that information is usually quite limited to basic stories and names, and unless they're particularly famous or successful, very rarely do we have a lot of information about our ancestors in that format.
Right.
So when I talk about digital immortality and mind uploading, it's about capturing who we are, capturing the essence, capturing our personality in as much detail as possible. 3 generations after us, a version of us can still interact with that generation of our descendants and be a part of their lives, help them with recipes, help them with stories, tell them about ourselves, tell them about what life was like, getting to know these people, a job, where we went for our travels, who our best friends in our family are. And that's, something that's only really achievable in the world made with all of this data capture we have and incredibly advanced technology that's starting to get some steam now. But hopefully we'll be able to actually achieve this form of digital immortality that I'm talking about.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So it sounds like, it's working to build an AI version of a person that can continue interacting with loved ones after they pass. So maybe tell us a little bit more about how that actually works and how would you interact with that twin or that clone? Is it through an app or is it computer based, or how does the interface work?
Yeah, so this idea of digital immortality was what inspired me to really start building out Sensay. And when Sensay became this whole much wider platform and super powerful that could be used for many different applications of technology. But I always still liked the idea of doing the digital afterlife technology. And so that's where I started building out the concepts for Forget Me Not. And the idea around creating what we call an echo. And this echo is to someone who's soon to pass or recently passed, capturing their data, their information, and putting it all together into this one. A bit like how when you go to a funeral, sometimes they ask you to contribute a story or some kind of video memory or something like that to create a digital ebook about the person. But what if it went beyond that? What if we could capture those stories, those memories with their journals and everything and just upload that into a digital version of that person to create as their echo? The idea is to have it trained on them while they're still alive, but if not, then obviously you can file enough notes and images from pretty much anything you can create a version of them. You then add the voice and the video, and then that creates this interactive chatbot over text, voice, and video, so that you can actually talk to the echo going forward and have that as something that just persists, a bit like having an animated photo on a countertop, or think of it more like the headmaster of Hogwarts. That was like the idea of having, and this actually comes from one of our advisors who wrote a book on virtual humans, that he has this incredible analogy of Dumbledore's office, where you've got all of these Hogwarts headmasters all around on the walls that can be there to share the information. So a bit like that, having these interactive portraits of your relatives that can share advice and be a part of your life. It's really one at the end of their life, but it's really about sharing that legacy of knowledge and passing down wisdom from the next generation, the generation after that. What if they are curious about you? What if they want to get to know you? Is that making that an option for them that we think is really powerful.
So how does the input work for someone who's still alive? I assume the model works better the more data it collects. A younger person, maybe my age or something, wants to start this journey so that they can preserve their legacy for their grandchildren or great grandchildren. Can I start uploading videos, pieces of my life, pictures, or capture thoughts? Tell me more about how long the process takes to produce a good model of a person.
Yeah, so it's not as long as you think. It depends on how organized the data is. Usually the actual voice elements in your video aren't too intensive. So you can just provide even a 30-second clip of the voice, and that works quite well. Obviously, you probably want 3 minutes of high quality audio, or not so much background noise as good quality audio for the audio training. And the video, if you've got 2 to 3 minutes of good quality recording of you as an avatar, looking at a camera on 4K as high definition recordings, you can get a really good video avatar and voice going. But those are actually relatively small add-ons to the overall knowledge base. The knowledge base is trained from uploading files, connecting to websites, social media, messages or emails. We have an entire studio designed to connect calendars and social media to your messages and your documents. So pretty much even your health stats, and anything else that you'd like to share with it. There's an interactive feature where it will phone you up and talk to you every day or for as long as you want to actually almost interview you about yourself and about your life, whether that's for 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour every day. And that can be done over text, email, or an actual voice call. And it feels very natural talking to it. But the technology is really incredible there. But having that as a training model for as much data as you can give it for as long as you can really helps to dig into stuff. And it's a wonderful experience of self-reflection as well. You get to really answer questions that you wouldn't normally talking about day to day. There's something really powerful in that, the fact that you get to have this opportunity to either do it for yourself and have that self-reflection, or helping someone that you care about. So it could be a parent, a brother, a sister. It could be anyone that you go through these questions with, and you help them to put in the answers. And you might find out things about them that you never knew. So it's a really great way to tie it into your personal connection. And that's what it's really about. It's really about storytelling and intergenerational connection.
So we've been talking a lot about like a person's personal diary, but what about something like a business use case, making sure the wisdom of the retiring employee isn't lost? How does your technology support that, and what benefits could that bring to industries like senior living or healthcare?
Yeah, so the two technologies Sensay is focusing on as a core company, allowing the opportunities for the get being able to be built on top of it for success applications. On the business side, Sensei created really quality AI chatbots, but also taking that idea of knowledge transfer and story transfer and wisdom transfer and applying it to companies, even governments, anywhere where there's a large bucket of employees that could be retiring or might be leaving in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Because when they do, you've got people retiring now on a big scale as well. I mean, your baby boomers are all retiring. You have this huge pool of people who are retiring with decades of knowledge sometimes, or real industry know-how, tacit knowledge, understanding about their clients, their projects, their teams. And this is not just a company problem. This is any organization, even governments have this problem. The unspoken truth is that knowledge has a lot of value. And that is a massive cost with companies and governments. And while they are leaving, there's very, very poor knowledge transfer happening. Sometimes there might be quite good knowledge transfer, which might mean someone shadowing them to 3 months, asking the questions, learning about that. But there's no guarantee that person stays on after the retiree leaves. So you've then got this knowledge gap, which is, a huge issue for a lot of companies. Some companies are more aware of it than others, and some work towards it. What you have maybe a little bit of training, maybe a handover document, an offboarding interview, but usually very little. Some will receive the retiree or leaver on the payroll as a consultant or a freelancer so that they can just keep access to that knowledge. And that's, basically, and it's just super inefficient. You're either losing knowledge or you're paying an expensive fee to keep someone on. So we're proposing that we can actually work on for this enterprise and governance is to take that idea of, capturing a form of digital immortality, but applying it to just the knowledge you have from your work or applying projects and your company systems into an interactive knowledge base. This doesn't need your voice or your video. In fact, it actually is almost a detriment if you do, because people feel it's a bit weird if they've got a version of them running around in the company they left 6 months ago. But by capturing the knowledge, that tacit knowledge, and having that same process, uploading your file, the document, connecting it to an interactive voice chat that can talk to someone and actually learn from them about their jobs, that can then essentially exist in that company as an interactive knowledge base. Could, where the team needs something, suddenly the team had a question about, where were you that project? Oh, who's this person? The contact list is emailing us, and having that knowledge base as an interactive source becomes really useful for a company. And what's more, on top of that, we can actually even enable the person who's left to still benefit from this. So let's say you ask the knowledge base, it's a question of, where were we with Intel as a client, or who was a contact at Intel? Now, if the knowledge base didn't have that information, what it could do is it could actually email the person who left saying, your knowledge base was asked XYZ, or it was asked, who was a contact at Intel. And if that person replies to the email saying, I don't know, it's Tim Smith, for example, the person replying could be rewarded by the company or government for their contribution. We're talking $20, $30 for the reply. So you assume that most people are good leaders and they want to help out the companies and governments, afterwards. So by making that knowledge available, you reward them for it. At the same time, you have this AI version that gets updated and constantly retrained on those additional answers. So you have the strong, good quality, up-to-date knowledge base straight after someone leaves, kept by the company or organization as long as they keep it alive. And so that's what we're working on. For Sensay, it's a really, a massive application for huge companies because there's no real solution out there for all the offloading beyond the exact interview. So we think there's going to be a really big uptake for all the companies that value knowledge management inside the companies.
Yeah, that's a really good use case. I guess that brings up another question about if we're preserving someone's personality or their business knowledge digitally, there might be some security concerns or ethical questions. What are the most important safeguard or security frameworks that you think should be in place around this kind of technology? What does Sensay have in place as a starting point?
Yeah, I think there's good principles you can have all around. You can be a security one. In terms of the principles, you can everything from not selling the data, not being a bad guy to start with. Beyond that, you're looking at what can you do in terms of encryption and security, how you store the data, manage access to the data, how you ensure that the knowledge base is kept exclusively for the right customer and the user. The short answer is we really just do the best we can using the latest security methods to make sure that our system is as secure as it can be. For a company, for example, we can actually host locally on our own systems so that we don't have to be connected to the website for individuals who are looking to capture and preserve that data and knowledge with us. We've building it in a way that's sustainable for the future. It's as secure as it can be that doesn't just reveal data, and even our AI ingestion of sensitive data goes through simply a filter that will take out anything that's too sensitive and also just ask the user if there's something that they're not sure about. So the really intuitive system is built, and it's there to make sure that you capture that essence and personality without just making all of your passwords and medical information available.
So I'm curious, what inspired you personally to get involved in the world of digital legacy and this mind uploading thing? Was there a particular moment in your life or a story that kind of sparked your passion on this topic?
Yeah. So I guess it feels like my whole life has been leading towards this. I studied philosophy at university after deciding between that and business. I was just drawn to philosophical questions from an early age. When I was studying, I specialized in philosophy, identity, and existentialism. It's been a continuation from there for the last 15 years. And it was around that time as well that I had quite a bad accident, and I bumped my head pretty severely and knocked myself unconscious and so I was concussed for 48 hours with, a completely blank memory. It was like having a word on the tip of your tongue, but every memory on the tip of my brain. It was this strangest feeling where I couldn't quite grasp the memories. I knew something, I couldn't quite get there. And it's been likened a bit to Alzheimer's suffering patients go through. That ability. You kind of know you're there, you know what you should know, but you can't quite get it out. So you can't answer the questions that people are asking. And it was terrifying. It was really awful. And it was that made me realize how fleeting our lives and our stories can be and how important our stories and our memories are to us. And so that triggered primarily a desire to want to do more and experience more. It inspired my adventurousness. It inspired my desire to travel and try everything and just be spontaneous and just do everything. But at the same time, it combined with the philosophical thought forms, it eventually drove me to write the first of my book series, which was based around this search for the meaning of life in a seemingly infinite universe, in a universe where there are more visible stars than there are grains of sand on this planet. In a space where we are so small in our impact in this earth, we'll be living. How do you don't believe in a God or an afterlife? How do you find some kind of meaning? How do you find a reason to do anything? The search for me really came back to looking through different religions, historical approaches, different philosophies around the meaning of life and extending your life and making yourself as big as you could be. So whether you're looking at life extending children and bloodlines and succession, success and fame, or even just inscribing, creating a tomb that happens to have your life story on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that really captures you and tells your story? We live in this world where we are surrounded by our own footprints, our photos, videos, messages, all this data about us. If combined with a sufficiently advanced AI, would actually enable us to create these autonomous digital replicas of ourselves that could go on and exist in our place alongside us. And then we get into this whole question of if you have something that looks like you, sounds like you, and thinks is you, what does that do to our sense of identity? What if consciousness is just a matter of computational power? What if AI does become sentient? What if these individual AIs become somewhat sentient and that they are you?
Right.
Then what does it mean for us? What if you literally exist alongside thousands of copies of yourself? And what if you don't like yourself? More importantly, what if your friends, family, and colleagues prefer the AI version of you to really use? And so you open up this huge sort of can of worms and questions around where that all goes and what the future holds. And that's kind of actually what I'm now writing as a third book is, okay, we now live in the world of AI and replicas and this is a normal thing for us. What then? What does that mean for us as humans? And I'm still going through the sort of philosophical exploration of that as a concept as a whole.
So you spoke a little bit about a period of memory loss that jogged a question in my mind. Have you explored any sort of use of the technology that might be a therapy for people suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's? I know that, for instance, music sometimes inspires people with memory loss to remember bits and pieces from their past, but could an interactive version of themselves serve as a good therapy for an elderly person with memory loss. I'm just curious if that's something you've looked into.
Yeah, we know that there's not too much research around it. One of the things we're doing is actually a bit of research around this as well, about how chatbots, whether they are in the likeness of the person they are interacting with. So if your replica is talking to you, does it actually help with memory retention? Because we're kind of sharing stories, it's learning from you, and you're remembering from it. Or is it better to actually have someone familiar that you recognize? So would it be, one of the biggest benefits of dementia and Alzheimer's patients is where the loneliness epidemic. Their family, their friends don't have enough time to give them. And so they become lonely, they become a bit withdrawn. And that fear creeps in, especially when more things are death. So what if you could create a brain of someone who has know very well that you can interact with? And so that technology hasn't really been tested out too much because now voice conversations are lifelike. Up until about 3 months ago, that wasn't the case. So before then, any version of like dementia patients interaction with chatbots typically wasn't recorded too much because the technology was difficult for that age and generation to work with. So the ability to get them to do it over any time was a challenge. Now with AI, for you to tell you that you're indoors and get very much feel like your parents every day, they can actually have a conversation with you for as long as they want to. Or grandparents even. That becomes this, new version of that where they don't have to be lonely anymore. They can actually, if they can't be a real person, they can just phone up their grandkids for a 5-hour conversation if they want to, and just have it in their voice and their style. The research of it quite up to the levitable and where I'm sure you'll get there in this year or two, they'll might explore quite a.
AI is changing so fast. How close do you think we are to actually being able to create a meaningful, interactive twin of a person that is very lifelike? Is that months away or a couple of years out? How fast do you see the technology evolving?
That's a great question. There is understanding what is good enough. Where would it be to a level that's kind of source people? On the one hand, it's already at a level where over text message, my replica will answer better when we write my emails, maybe write some of my Telegram messages or messaging systems. I've got it drafting different social posts for me and Twitter for me. But on the one hand, there's an argument to say we're already at a good level, so that you are getting a good output to people who don't know you that well. On the other hand, was the argument of, how can you get it to a good enough level where someone who knows you quite well would be able to, do you think it's not you? We're quite far away from that. They probably know that 2-3 years or even 4 years away. It is the next generation space and moving very, very fast. There's a lot of nuance in terms of memory storage and the functionality guidelines where it's hard to overcome the natural bias and language of the LLMs or it's not getting away from. And beyond that, there's a lot of nuances in our personality. As creatures, we like to think of ourselves as being super penetrated. The reality is, we're not that complicated when it comes to creating repetition and understanding. But it's only ever as good as the data. And the biggest limitation is our ability to actually ingest the data in the meaningful thing. So, if we had, after not too much training, I've been maybe about a few hours of conversation with it, maybe uploading a few relevant links to websites and sending messages, as well as your voice and video, showing that voice and video to someone, and they'd be like, wow, that's exactly like you. It's almost in a similar story. But it's when we then get into the question that you know the answer of the answer, which, method doesn't maybe someone will slip their mind when you're training it. That's where it's limited. This is where we're working towards, even in the loop feedback that we talked about before, the business use case. So if the knowledge base doesn't have the answer, the knowledge base will send the person a message saying, well, if you want to answer for this, please, you apply that updates the knowledge base. The same thing that you applied to the digital twins. If you, again, maybe not for everything devs, I'll give you that, but while they're alive, if someone's interacting with it, and whether it's running your messages on Twitter or WhatsApp, and it doesn't have the answer, it will send you a message saying something like, oh, your replica's been asked XYZ, how would you respond? You say ABC, that goes into the training set, which means that, well, there's sort of common questions we get asked over the way. There's some even the more abstract questions that you might answer over 1 year, pretty much probably covers most conversations you've had because you cover most of the story, cover most of the relevant information that people would actually ask you. You know, all get the odd questions on your friend, oh, do you remember that time we were 18 and down this particular party? And you may remember, but you also might not, right? There's human memory is fallible itself, and we kind of make up stuff ourselves. So people talk about like AI hallucinating, like humans hallucinate all the time. It's really, I think there's a crazy statistic about the amount of times humans lie. And so when it comes to actually replicating that in AI version of ourselves, it's really, it's our own perception and feel of it. It's actually the issue more gas. The ability for the AI to replicate it based on quality data is probably really rare, but it's that capturing of data, it's the ingestion of data, and then how our own perception of interacting with AI is the bigger issue. My AI writes all my emails in a format that I would write if I had time. Now, when I don't have the time, I'm very short on emails. I write like one sentence and it's very abrupt.
Right.
But if I had time, I would write out emails properly. Hello, and write it all out. Since my AI is trained to write it in that way, no one notices. No one says a thing about my emails AI because you can't overlook it.
Right.
So in some sense, it's already at that stage, but for the average person, you've still got quite a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was thinking with the Tesla robot somewhere in the future, I suspect we're going to see some AI versions of ourselves, not so much as just portraits on the wall, but maybe actual robots, not just speaking like us, but moving and walking like us. All kinds of science fiction stuff is coming to mind.
Yeah, that's one absolutely great example. But yeah, even with the idea of the Tesla bots. So this is one of the thought experiments that I talked about recently. When you have this replication technology, and we're on the one hand, the AI and technology getting to this incredible state. On the other hand, you've got civilizations collapsing because of the low birth rates and low reproduction. So, and an aging population. So you've got a collapsing birth rates, huge population crisis coming out where we're going to be older than ever, healthier than ever in older age, but also no younger generations come in and pick this up. And this is, super famous for South Korea, who have a big issue that in the next 20 years, they're going to have a real problem here. On the other hand, you have robotics and AI getting to this level where you will actually almost be able to, by capturing the personality and those memories, those stories, those histories of knowledge and wisdom from that aging population, and almost repopulating the youth with data, you actually end up having this kind of human-robot hybrid society that enables, basically stops the issues that you have with an aging population. They don't have anyone to take care of them. They don't have anyone to do the work and the labor. But with AI and robotics getting to that kind of level, you essentially could have, a robot version of every person who's all elderly there as a second younger self to do the work, to help support the economy, to actually help maintain a healthy health and liveliness of the elderly. And that becomes, that becomes almost not a solution, obviously, but it's definitely a massive step to avoiding a catastrophic collapse of society. We've built something towards this already, where we bought an island in the Philippines and put an AI dungeon to young the island, some of the most famous politicians in history. This is a testament to the quality of what the team have built. AI can step into key role in society as advisors or even actually decision makers. Obviously, you've got to overcome your bias. There's always going to be inherent biases in any AI that's there, but it's possible that these AIs will be able to live among us, advise us, govern us, or even just to do the work that needs to be done, or be a part of our joint society. If we think of it, a combination of 1 million people or 1 million AIs, everyone gets some have to be equal votes into society, then you end up with this, let's say, new version of democracy, a new version of civilization, a new way of living side by side with this technology. Hopefully, it goes the right way every time.
That sounds like an interesting experiment. Seems like you spend a lot of time around the world, currently in Barcelona, living in Mexico City, visiting Silicon Valley. Do you see any trends in tech and culture, other places or communities that are more open to these types of ideas of digital legacy than maybe other places in the world?
Yeah, for sure. Technology wise, I think Asia is now getting leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the world. Europe is super far behind. The US is still in pockets. Europe and Silicon Valley and Texas are doing really well and fast pace and exactly adopts technology. And certain countries in Latin America and Africa are limited by their governments and corruption and also foreign interference. I mean, there's quite a few countries that are under the thumb of the US right now, which is a bit unfortunate, really. But on the Asian side, definitely way ahead of everyone. It's incredible the way our cities and civilizations are being built around respect, culture, future drive, and just wanting to be ambitious. Their work ethic is crazy. They're really a step ahead of everyone else. In terms of cultural adoption, when it comes to this idea of digital immortality, so there's a bit of a mixed bag. The cultures from Mexico to certain African nations have historical tribal cultures around connection with the ancestors. You see this connection to your ancestors, this idea of spirituality, connecting with your deceased relatives as a part of who you are, as part of your personal and cultural identity. So you would think that there needs to be a bit more easy to accept. You see a bit more of a pushback there. You see in some Western culture a bit more of a kind of an openness to it. In Europe and North America, the issue there is that people don't like to talk about death. They don't like to think about it. They don't plan for their death. They think I'm immortal. They think everyone's just going to live forever. They think about their own possible mortality and what that means for them. They don't make their will. They don't have any kind of plans in place for anything until it's quite late on. And so the idea of doing something like this doesn't really pop up until something already passed. People get a lot of inquiries about people saying, "Oh, I wish I had this for my mum before she died," or something like that, right? So we get a lot of that. And so there's definitely an educational aspect to what we need to do to make you aware that this is something you should be doing as part of your life, not for yourself, but for your parents, your kids, for their grandkids, but just to have there as a burden. Probably the biggest adoption of this type of technology is in China. The Chinese have this willingness to replicate loved ones and previously deceased parents and family members. Maybe it's got something to do with their connection or awareness or just a willingness to adopt new technology. So, that's probably the biggest market for this type of technology at the moment.
Okay, great. You've also written 2 books that dive into these topics. Could you give us a preview of what people might learn from the books and where they can find them?
Sure. Both are right. There's 2 at the moment. Working on a third one. They're both on Amazon. The first one, as I mentioned, was philosophical exploration into my own search for meaning and identity and a bit of existentialism thrown in. And that was more around the philosophy of, if we could create these AI versions of ourselves, should be what's the view on by other civilizations and historical cultures around immortality. Essentially just continuing that philosophical search for some kind of, fountain of youth and immortality. The second book is more, assuming that we have the possibility to do it, assuming the technology could exist, how would we go about it? And this became a roadmap we wanted to build for Sensay. This is, if mortality is achievable, what do we need to do to achieve it? So what are the steps? What are the data we need to achieve? What's the technology we need to have? How do we actually create this? And then how do we benchmark it against a real person to make it seem like it's, the right thing? So it's more of a scientific instructional guide into how to build digital immortality. The third in the series, I guess, I don't know if it's the last one yet. It's about this idea of post-human AI relations when this just exists. I mean, everyone has a digital clone and it's either side by side with them or we're interacting with generations past of digital clones who are managing assets of people or they are literally acting as them into the future. What does that mean to us as individuals? What does that mean to our identity as humans who are limited to our own brains when an AI version of ourselves can pre-think everything for you and can be every decision you could ever do that you could run as a simulation? Do we just lose our brains altogether or do we side by side or do we reject the whole thing altogether and go back to living in the woods? Mm-hmm. Who knows? I still haven't quite got to the conclusion yet, but that's one I'm working on. Okay.
Speaking of the future, if you had to look 5 or 10 years down the road, how do you see the biggest changes coming in how we think about memory, legacy, and the technology we've been talking about? Is there anything that individuals or families should start preparing for today in terms of leveraging this technology?
Yeah, I think it's always good to be aware of that and aware of the fact that memories and stories are fleeting, and there are so many stories that everybody thought about themselves. Like which stories if you're going to pass on to your friends, your family, after you pass on, and how what parts of your life would you know about your great grandparents, for example, and that was my life. And so it's very important for anyone to not be afraid of, the last 10 years, we've only been talking about preserving privacy, not sharing our data, not having any of our information out. And the reality is we need to get past that a bit. Make the recordings, film yourselves, take the photo, poops for your messages and your email, because all of this one day will just be through you a high quality picture of you that you can pass on. And some people really don't want that. That's fine. It's not for everyone. So we should at least respect people's wishes about having their likeness carried on. But I really think that's a bit, selfish to just short-sighted, because it's not thinking about, I don't want someone talking like me for the next 50 years. Because after 100 years, no one's going to care anyway.
Mhm.
If you have what someone 100 years ago was saying, the parts of my close friend, or close family. And so having that available for them as something to get to know you. You look back at 3 generations ago and said, oh, I don't want to record myself. I don't want to have anything marketing afterwards. You just look back and go, well, and what's your great grandkids going to say to that when they see that was your choice? They're going to want to know you. They're going to want to know about you. And when they don't have that opportunity, it's probably part of their own history. So it's not for you, really. It's about making you available to them. But yes, I think there's every big importance there to start recording yourself, record the memories, record the stories, that you write them down, or you record your voice, recording them, or you film yourself talking about them. Just record the stories and things so like you get comfortable. And then later on, the ingestion methods you get better, the ability to understand you get better. And that's going to be what gets passed on to the next generation and beyond.
Well, this has been an incredible look into what might be the future of legacy and remembrance. This is an awesome conversation, Dan. Thanks for sharing your vision and your insights with us today.
Honestly, we talk about this for hours.
Yeah, lots of good stuff to dive into. So for everyone listening, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it message you on LinkedIn or find you on the Sensay website if people wanted to connect?
Yeah, so you can pretty much find me on any platform. I do this handle at Sensay Dan. And you can go to the Sensay website at sensay.io. You can even chat to my replica on that page as well. So there's plenty of ways to get to know me or reach me. And we're going to conversations around chatbots, immortality, AI, mind building, and everything else to do with it.
Awesome. I'm Ben Smith. This is the Net Result. If you want to learn more about WSI and our digital marketing offerings, you can find me on LinkedIn at Ben Smith WSI. Thanks for being with us. And until next time, keep looking forward.